As a teenager, I can remember a few times where I was the center of attention because someone had told me a secret that everybody wanted to know. And I was usually pretty good at keeping those secrets, but I had a weakness for pretty girls. And whenever they would come looking for that information, my better judgment would get blocked by this intoxication of hormones and emotions. And the next thing I knew, I was spilling my deepest, darkest secrets. The memory of that experience reminds me of one of my favorite quotes about faith, which comes from Flannery O'Connor, which I have to paraphrase because I don't remember it exactly, but it was something like, "Faith is what you know to be true, whether you believe it or not." Another good example of what I'm talking about is when people are learning to swim, because everybody knows that a human being can float. We are less dense than the water that we're trying to swim in, and that can be even demonstrated for people by just doing a back float in front of them. And so there's a knowledge that is accepted before it has to be put to the test. But when you put that person into the water, all of a sudden panic and fear and emotions rise up against that knowledge. Faith in this instance is the knowledge of the thing that you accepted to be true, but now in this moment when your emotions are challenging it and it's being put to the test, it's the thing that you have to cling to even though it doesn't feel like it's true. So faith in these examples describes the things that you know to be true and good, that you've embraced when you were in a sober state of mind, when you were able to think morally and critically. That's why we talk about marriage in terms of faithfulness. We make the commitment to marriage when we are thinking clearly and morally, but at some point, that conviction and that commitment are going to be put to the test. When nothing is testing your moral resolve, your reason and good judgment are easily accessible to tell you what is right and what is wrong. But at some point, circumstances are going to conspire against your reason. It might be a conspiracy of hormones or alcohol or emotions or any number of things, but the important thing to remember in those moments is what your reason and good judgment told you when your mind wasn't compromised by those things. In these moments, your feelings are telling you to disregard those good moral decisions and conclusions that you had made earlier. Your faith, though, is telling you that even though you don't feel the strength of those convictions now, you have to hold firm to them regardless of how you feel. This is how faith and reason work together, and it has huge implications for our moral behavior. When we're thinking clearly and we aren't compromised by hormones or emotions, good moral ideas seem easy to embrace. Things like you shouldn't lie or cheat someone, you should always keep your promises, and you should always help those in need whenever you're able to. But what happens when keeping your promise is going to cost you something, or telling the truth means you won't be able to leverage some sort of advantage that you would have wanted, or when helping someone in need means you need to go without something that you would have wanted for yourself? It's in those moments when your commitment to those values is tested, and that commitment is your faith. Compassion is one of those things that is almost universally affirmed as a moral good in our society. But it's also often thought of as an emotion, which raises a bit of a problem for us. Because how can an emotion be consistently relied on as a guide for our moral behavior towards others? Because the question of whether or not we are good should be measured against our ability to be consistently good. Because if a person is only good some of the time, then how can we really say that they are a good person? The problem with emotions is that they're subject to a whole range of influences, things like hormones and sleep and diet and the weather. And these are things that are outside of our control, so we can't really depend on our emotions to instruct our moral behavior. What we need is something that can direct our moral behavior even when our emotions are failing us, or worse, when they're rebelling against us. What we need are reasons and convictions to behave morally. And we can draw from a number of sources for those convictions. It could be something like religious doctrines or philosophical arguments or the wisdom of others. And whatever those sources are, it is our commitment to those convictions that will help us to behave consistently, whether our emotions are aligned with them or not. And that commitment is faith. So when we speak of faith in this sense, I think it's absolutely necessary for us to be consistently good. But what about faith in God? Is it possible to be good without faith in God? And I would say it depends on whether or not God actually exists. If God does exist, and as Christians claim, He is the source of truth and goodness, then cutting yourself off from that source is going to severely compromise your ability to be good. As a Christian, I believe that God is love. And since love is an outward disposition that seeks the good of another, I believe that God enables everyone, Christians, theists, whatever, and non-believers, to be good. But the longer that pattern of non-belief and rejection of God persists, the harder it's going to become to be moral. Being moral means collaborating with goodness. And if God is truth, goodness, and beauty, then it means cooperating with God. If we reject God, then we are also rejecting goodness. And that's going to make it a lot harder for us to be good. Thank you guys for watching that. If you enjoyed that, then please like it and share it and subscribe and come follow along for more content. And if you want to support the making of these videos, then please consider supporting the business that makes them possible. Holdsworth Design is a digital marketing and communications company that specializes in web design, print design, branding, videography, and all that kind of stuff. So, and this is with a special emphasis on churches and ministries as well. So if you know somebody that needs those services, then please consider passing that along to them, and check out the website, which is www.holdsworthdesign.com.